Is the Abrams overrated? The tank with many names like the best tank in the world, invincible, game changer. But how did it manage to secure these titles for itself? Is the Abrams really that good, or it is just overhyped? In this video I will try to reveal some truth and facts about the Abrams and its combat capabilities, what is less known among the people. So without any further ado, let's jump into it.
Grind, pain, joy.
So how did it secure the title as being the best tank in the world? If we check the Abrams in Warthunder, it is quite lackluster protection-wise, but many people still praise it, especially among pro players because of its excellent firepower, gun handling, mobility and rate of fire. But for common folks like me, I have a different opinion because of its armor, because it's almost non-existent outside of its turret cheeks, which is not exactly what we were imagined about the best tank in the world, which never lost due to enemy fire because of its impressive armor. Did Gaijin just weaken its armor on purpose because it's a Russian bot company? Or are they somewhat correct about the Abrams protection, we just didn't want to believe it? We know very little about the current Abrams armor layout in real life, but I think it is much different than in game. But anyway, let's see how did the Abrams perform in real life by checking the available data what we have on the internet. I'm gonna go through on all major conflicts where the Abrams were deployed, which were the Gulf War, the Iraqi War, Saudi Arabia intervention in Yemen, and finally Ukraine. So let's start with the Gulf War where it's all began. In my opinion, the main reason why the Abrams is called as the best tank in the world is because of its flawless performance in the Desert Storm in 1991. The M1 Abrams dominated the Operation Desert Storm, where it proved to be nearly untouchable by older Soviet-made tanks. Keyword: older. Its armor either shattered the incoming shells or completely stopped them, which showed superior armor against Soviet-made tanks. In the whole conflict, only 9 Abrams were destroyed, 7 of which were due to friendly fire and 2 intentionally destroyed to avoid capture. Maybe they got mobility killed or something, I don't know. While the Abrams destroyed hundreds of Iraqi armor. So this conflict showed that the Abrams is superior to anyone else, right?
Right.
Okay, let's see what the Abrams were actually fighting against. Prior to 1991, Iraq possessed one of the world's largest tank armies, ranking 5th globally, approximately 5,500 main battle tanks including Soviet-made T-55 62s and T-72s, and also several hundred of Chinese-made Type 59s and 69s. While the coalition forces deployed a total of 3,400 tanks, including 1,800 M1 Abrams and a bit more than 200 Challenger 1s, so they had roughly 2,000 top-notch up-to-date tanks. Iraq had the numbers for sure, but quality and training-wise they were far behind the coalition army standards. Their main forces were relying on old T-55s which entered service in the late 50s, and their best munition were APDS shells, which were obviously quite obsolete in 1991. Those T-55s got easily one-tapped by the Abrams and the Challenger outside of their combat range. A British Challenger 1 tank held the record for several decades as the longest range tank-to-tank kill, destroying an Iraqi T-55 at the distance of 5,100 meters. Basically, the coalition forces could just test out their new toys without any fear to getting fired back. Iraq also used T-62s, which are almost as old as the T-55, but at least it had some early type of sabot round. And only the elite tank division got T-72s. In the conflict, they deployed around 500 T-72s and lost around 150 units, mainly using M1 and Ural variants, which are old downgraded export versions, lacking any modern day upgrades like era packages, thermal sights and modern munitions. So comparing the two sides, I think it is quite obvious Iraq had almost zero chance to inflict any real damage on the coalition ground forces because the technological gap was just too huge. In Warthunder terms, Iraq got up-tiered heavily and they got stumped pretty bad. Stat-wise, both the Abrams and the Challenger had a really good KDR, so they could declare that they are the best tank in the world and no one even near to their level of supremacy. Or at least this is what we were believed for many years.
I can do whatever the fuck I want! I can do whatever the fuck I want!
The next conflict happened in the same place but a few years later in 2003, the Iraqi War, other codename Operation Iraqi Freedom. It's a quite funny name. Thousands of tanks were deployed throughout the long conflict. By March 2005, over 80 Abrams were forced out of action, with 70 damaged beyond repair. Other reports indicate that roughly 37 tanks were destroyed during the main conflict phase up to 2008. Many were damaged or destroyed by improvised explosive devices, RPGs, or anti-tank guided missiles used by the insurgents. Despite these engagements, the 2003 war saw fewer large-scale open-field tank battles compared to 1991, as many Iraqi tanks were already destroyed by air power before engaging the coalition ground forces. So there weren't many big tank engagements this time, so no one could really question the Western armor's supremacy, but it showed that even the best tank in the world was vulnerable against ATGMs and RPGs in urban combat, so they upgraded their tanks with Tusk armor to improve their protection. We jump to the third major deployment in Yemen 2015. Saudi Arabia was leading a coalition of 9 countries from West Asia and North Africa, staged a military intervention in Yemen at the request of the Yemeni president. Long story short, reports indicate that several Saudi-operated Abrams tanks have been damaged or destroyed by anti-tank missiles. Strange thing is that even though it's quite recent, there aren't many crystal clear information about armor losses. The best what I could find is about 20 units were most likely destroyed by Yemeni forces, some of which were destroyed by Russian-made Coronet missiles, but it is quite blurry. Anyway, no major armor-to-armor engagement happened, so again, the Western armor's supremacy was not questioned. The losses happened due to the bad tactics and the badly trained tank crew. Anyway, we finally reached the Ukraine-Russo war. Warthunder players and tank lovers were both excited to see the possibility to a modern-day tank-to-tank combat between the best tanks in the world. Abrams, Leopard 2s, Challenger 2s were about to show the world their unrivaled supremacy against the obsolete, weak, trash Russian tanks. Western tech lovers were expected to see huge breakthroughs and hundreds of burning turretless Russian wreckages in the wake of Western armor, just like in 1991. That's what many people were expected. In reality, things got ugly quite fast. These overhyped machines did nothing to change the flow of the war, they did not breach any front lines, and they didn't destroy hundreds of Russian armor either. The Western tanks and their lackluster performance was blamed on the Ukrainians, of course, because of their lack of combined warfare and lack of air superiority. Like, how would you achieve something like that when you are facing a much stronger foe who has the capability to deploy decent anti-air batteries, aircrafts, and a lot more? Listen, Russia may not be as powerful as in the USSR times, but they are not a third world country equipped with just sandals and RPGs either. Russia has the capability to destroy most of the Western tech. Ukraine war showed the world that cheap drones can dominate the battlefield against anything, and no matter what tank you are in, you will be taken out in a matter of minutes near to the contact line. There are no big tank battles anymore. There are some occasions when it happens, but we can't see big differences between the sides anymore. Russian tanks are just as deadly as Westerns. Actually, against infantry and fortification they are even more terrifying. Several M1 tanks provided to Ukraine have been destroyed by Russian FPV drones and ATGMs, with losses reported in the first few months of their deployment. From the 31 Abrams Ukraine received from the US, 27 are already confirmed to be destroyed or captured. Recently, Ukraine received an additional 49 M1 Abrams from Australia, and their numbers are dropping fast as well. But it doesn't mean that the Abrams is a bad tank because of its losses, but the fact that it was presented as a Wunderwaffe and an absolute game changer, only to suffer significant losses mere days after it was officially put in combat zone. There is no perfect weapon, and losses don't mean that something is bad. Tools are being used, and this time the opposition is similarly well equipped.
What the hell is even that?
So after all of these information what I just presented to you, it shows many things, but the major ones are: 1. The Abrams' flawless combat performance was achieved due to the huge technological gap between the US and Iraq, and not because the Abrams is that insanely good. Just to put into perspective, imagine that the M48 and M60 are facing T-80Us and T-72Bs. Quite unfair matchup, with a quite obvious outcome. We would praise the T-80U as the best tank in the world because it managed to destroy all the relics of war. It would be totally bullshit, right? And this is what exactly happened in 1991. 2. The Abrams until Ukraine never faced any real opponent. The T-90M and ATBVM might be not as good as the Russian promote, but they are way far better and deadlier than anything the Abrams faced before. Of course, people always say that the Abrams what Ukraine received are older variants and it's already 20 years old equipment, but these people somehow forgetting that in 1991 the same thing happened to Iraq. The Iraqis used almost 30 years old equipment against the coalition forces, and the technological gap between the 50s and 80s were much bigger than we have right now. Yes, the Abrams what Ukraine operates are not the same protection and capability wise what the US is currently fielding, but just as mentioned by Red Effect too, the turret roof of these tanks are the same, meaning an FPV drones can easily punch through the turret armor no matter if you are sitting in an M1A1 or a SEPV3. Also, both can be mobility killed the same way, meaning the most advanced Abrams would perform quite the same as the current M1A1 against drones, mines and artillery. Maybe it could absorb more drones like the T-90M, but that's it. So yeah, I don't think the Abrams is the best tank in the world, but it does have one trait which is better than almost anyone else. It's cruise survivability. No one comes even close to that. Even if the armor get compromised, if the crews survive the penetration, they can still possibly bail out from the tank thanks to its blowout panels if the bustle door is still intact. So cruise survivability wise, the Abrams is indeed the best in the world. But outside of that, armor firepower wise, many other countries reach the same level if not surpassed already. The Abrams is definitely a hell of a beast, but it is just as vulnerable as any other tank to modern day ATGM and drones. Actually, having the blowout panel on the top of the turret is an easy target for drone operators without cope cage to instantly vaporize all of its ammunition, hindering its combat effectiveness. So in my opinion, the Abrams was and is overhyped for many decades. It is still a great tank nevertheless. But anyway, that's it from me today. What do you think about this? Are you satisfied with my analysis? Do you think the US armor is still superior to everyone else? Let me know in the comment section below. Also leave a like and sub if you want to see more content like this. You can also find me on TikTok and Twitch. And anyway, have a good one and see you in the next one. Bye.